That is the field at Reliant Stadium in Houston as it was being piecemealed together before this season. A field where a lot of major injuries have happened. Wes Welker of the Patriots had his knee injury on the final game of the season a couple of years ago. And the Pittsburgh Steelers went in there last week and had, my goodness, a rash of injuries. Ben Roethlisberger, James Harrison, and other stuff. Not all attuned to the turf, but it does bring up questions about stadiums and turf and the impact on injuries. Time to talk some real stories around the NFL and the fantasy impact of it right now with our RotoWire.com fantasy and reality segment and bringing Jeff Stotts just back in. Jeff, how bad is that field and what is this a bigger example of?
You know, the big thing in Reliant is not necessarily the field itself, but how it's put together. You know, it's like you guys saw, it's squares of grass being pieced together, and it kind of makes for some inconsistencies. You know, the advancements in turf these days, you know, it is real grass. It's not a synthetic grass. But again, those plates seem to be causing problems. Bill Belichick, you know, went off on the media and went off on the field a couple years ago when Wes Welker suffered his ACL tear going down, blaming it on the conditions of the field. And a lot of the problems stem from the fact that it's pieced together and it creates inconsistencies in the field. You know, when you're looking at a field, it comes down to two factors when we really look at how it affects the play, and that's the coefficient of friction and the coefficient of restitution. And so any inconsistencies will throw these things off. For the coefficient of friction, you're talking about, you know, a higher grade friction surface area is going to make it stickier and grabbier, and it's going to be harder to plot there. And I actually got a little experiment here for you, Butch. I know how you love them. Here, there's the Welker thing. He went down, but so I got a piece of glass here. You can see it?
Yep.
All right, and I don't have a football player, so I'm going with your man, Larry Legend here. You know, I'm moving Larry right across the glass, nice and smooth. Okay.
Yeah.
Low coefficient of friction on that glass. Now flip it over. I got a piece of sandpaper taped down it, and you can see how I'm moving. And when I get to that paper, it takes me a lot more force to move across the sandpaper, and that's because it's got a higher coefficient of friction. And that's what happens on these synthetic surfaces is that the friction tends to be higher, so it creates a very forceful area. It takes more force to move, and you have guys getting their feet stuck in the ground and creating closed kinetic chains where it's just making the lower leg extremely prone to ligament and muscle ruptures and tears because there's so much force looking for an escape route because their lower extremity is now rigid.
Andre Johnson going down last week. What do you relate? How much of this was turf related?
You know, it was a non-contact injury, and so it was interesting to see. You know, it was a little different from the Welker play because he didn't necessarily plant and move. He just kind of went down, and that's always kind of a good sign of something giving out, whether it's muscle, ligament, you know, or tendon. And especially since it was non-contact, you know, the first thing I thought was knee, but where he grabbed was closer to the distal portion of his hamstring. So I thought possibly hamstring. You know, he wasn't. You know, he's able to walk off, which was, you know, a good indicator that maybe it wasn't quite as serious as they thought. They're saying that it's a significant hamstring injury. They're continuing to seek specialists. He had a procedure done. They're hopefully he's going to get him back quicker, but they're saying he's going to be out at least 3 weeks, and which is a big blow because he's a huge fantasy weapon.